Well, my father had gone into the army in World War One and was a machine gunner and went over to France and fought in the war till it was over, and managed to get gassed some, messed up his lungs a bit, but he came home and went back to school. He was raised a Catholic in a Catholic home. He was one of 13 children. And after he came back, he left the Catholic religion and went to Seventh-day Adventist religion. And he ended up, after his primary, going back to school with a bunch of kids. He's already a mature man and getting his some education. He ended up in nursing school in Boulder, Colorado. I think that's where he met my mother. And she was, one lady of a bunch of sisters. I think there was 9 females in the family and a couple of males. My dad had about 13 people in his family. And yeah, they met in Boulder and got married. And I was born in Loveland, Colorado, in October 11, 1923, and was about a year and a half old or so when they finished their nurses training in Boulder. And they had bought this gray, that's the name of the company, or car, 4-door, 4-cylinder automobile with isinglass side curtains and a convertible top. And we loaded up whatever we had there and drove it to Lincoln, Nebraska, where we established a home. Dad built a home there. And my mother and dad both were trained nurses at that time and had gone to cooking school and all phases of it, so they could go out and nurse in homes where elderly lived and needed help. And that's what they started doing after they got the home built. And we 15 months later there, my brother was born in Lincoln, and we were nursed out to a family, Mrs. Gibson, to take care of us during the week, more or less, night and day, when folks are at these homes taking care of the elderly. Anyhow, it was a nice little house, but the parents, my mom and dad, got disillusioned being gone all the time and having somebody else raise their kids. So about 1928, where they purchased the half section of land out in Kimball County, Nebraska, 12 miles from Pine Bluffs and about 12 miles from Bushnell. And District 23, that was the school district it was in, and it's 2 miles from the school. And Dad went out there with the old Nellie Gray, that same old car they had driven from Colorado to Lincoln, and built a tar paper shack on the place and had a well drilled on it. And Mom and us 2 little rascals stayed in Lincoln until he got it finished. And we got on a train in about 1930. Because I was about 6 years old at the time. We went from Lincoln on this train all the way up to Pine Bluffs, got off, and for some reason Dad had Eric Johnson, who was our neighbor just to the mile south of us, come into Pine Bluffs and pick us up and cart us out to the ranch. And man, it was bleak out there, just prairie, and there's a couple of little houses, and a little old house and a windmill. We didn't even have a chicken barn built yet. Anyhow, we hit the Depression just about that time, and didn't make anywhere near the kind of money that they figured they was going to on that wheat farming and farming out there. But for several years there, we were raising sweet corn, popcorn, and shelling it, and taking it into town and trading it for groceries at the grocery store, stuff like that, just to survive. And time we started the school, we were 2 miles to the west of us, so I had to go to school. And the earliest we'd walk, and it was a pretty good date. We'd make it to school and back, but we were all tuckered out by that time. We weren't chasing around and doing anything silly. And sometimes we'd ride with the neighbors who lived a mile east of us, and they'd drive by about 1/8 of a mile north of us, and we'd catch them and ride in their old Chevy. And later we got a horse named Silver, and we rode it to school, bareback, and tie it in the barn there, and it'd sit there all day, and then when it come time to go home, that horse was anxious to get home, and we had a hard time keeping it from running all the way home. Anyhow, my little brother would ride behind me and kick my ankles, putting it all the way to school and back. I got so I hated him. But we did fight a little bit, but we never hurt each other too bad. Oh yeah. 1936, we had pretty well survived the Depression that hit. Managed to eat soaked wheat for breakfast, cereal, and raise pigs and slaughter them and put them in grease and pork barrels and killed our own beef out there. The 1936, my dad got a soldier's bonus for being in World War I of $1,000, and we thought we was in hog heaven after going through the Depression. But he bought this demonstrator Dodge sedan, 4-door, flathead 6-cylinder engine, 3-speed on the floor, clutch, brake. Had a few miles on it. I think it was about $450 or so. And we took a trip all the way from Nebraska up into Idaho, up into Washington to see old neighbors and stuff, and then down into California to see my mother's sister who lived in Sonoma. And run across this piece of property for sale by an Adventist named Gonder, and Dad traded him the car for a down payment on the place and bought it, and but then kept the car to go back to Nebraska in, and going to turn it over to him when he got back to California. Well, we went on down to Long Beach to visit my Aunt Alice and Aunt Lucille, who were Dad's older, they were his, Lucille was his older sister, and I think Alice was his younger sister. Anyhow, they lived down there and had migrated there from Wisconsin. So we went and visited them, and then we went and visited the Grand Canyon, then we went to Colorado and picked up some plums, and then we drove back to the ranch in Nebraska and started preparing to move to California. And Dad took old Nellie Gray apart and made a flatbed trailer out of it, out of the frame, and junked out the rest of it. And hooked it behind the 36 Dodge, and in the meantime, he had bought a 36 International pickup, little half-ton, and used it for a while, and then we finally had a little sale there and sold off some of the stuff and loaded up the rest of it on that flatbed trailer and loaded up that pickup, and the folks took off for California in the Dodge and the trailer. In between times, they had hauled some stock into Kimball to sell, and my brother and sister had been born by then and born out there in Nebraska, and sister was about 3 years old, and she's riding in the back of this Dodge as they're going into Kimball with I think they had pigs in that trailer. Anyhow, that back door was a suicide door, and it was rattling, and Mother mentioned it, and Dad started slowing down, and Sister was going to take and open it and close it, but they were still doing about 25, 30 miles an hour, and as she opened it to close it tight, it threw her out in the ditch and gave her a brain concussion, and she ended up in the hospital there in Kimball for a while. And at the same time, my younger brother came down with mastoid and pneumonia, and he was in the hospital. And I was alone at the ranch. My little brother, the youngest brother, hadn't been born yet. But what do you think I would?
If your wood was around, it's going to scrape your clothing.
Okay. Anyhow, I was alone up the ranch there for a while, and the neighbors were bringing pies and cakes over and trying to be nice and sympathetic, and I ate some of that stuff to the extent of my bad health and got a little sick myself. But my sister recovered, and little brother, he recovered too. He had to have surgery done on his ear, and it cut a big old bunch of bone out of his ear and stuff, but he made it. But we took and finally loaded up that trailer and behind the Dodge and headed for folks headed for California, and it was the two younger kids and my brother just younger than myself, and left me to drive the pickup. 14. Drive the pickup out there to California by myself. I took the neighbor lady and had her with me till we hit Laramie, and I dropped her off and then went on out to California. Gas was running about 37 cents a gallon then, and the old truck made it fine. And I made it fine. Unfortunately, I got Sonoma, and a week later I got a ticket driving the truck downtown because I didn't have a license. And Eberhardt was our chief police there, and I got a special permit to drive because I'd been driving for some time already anyhow. But we turned the car over to Gonder, who we bought the ranch from, and kept the old trailer around there for a long time, and finally it got mastized into a float on the ranch to haul brush in, and the wheels and stuff with wooden spokes got tied to a disc so that when they hit the trees there on the ranch, the disc wouldn't cut into them, it would push the disc over. But it got junked out. Great old car. Anyhow, for the next several years, Dad would go back to Nebraska and suitcase farm. We'd plant a crop of wheat and come back the next fall and harvest it and plant another crop and then go back to California. And I went back with him 1 year, and my brother and a friend went back with him a couple years. Anyhow, I had to have at least 2 people back there to run the tractor and the combine to harvest the wheat. But it allowed us to pick up some financial stability to pay off the ranch in California. anyhow, the place in California got turned into a prune and orchard, and with cows on it, and chickens on it, and pigs on it, and Dad, for the next bunch of years, he stayed there till 1986. Was raising pigs and selling real prime hog meat, custom dressed and butchered out and put in people's lockers. And we raised and marketed eggs and milk cows and sold the milk into the creamery there. And this lasted up into about 41. And I was going to school and going to high school. And in my senior year, I took up welding and became very proficient at it and got a job over at Basalt shipyard, welding ships up in the double bottoms down the bottom. There's Liberty ships, they call them. Ended up buying a motorcycle for $250, 1937 Indian Chief. My dad loaned me the money and let me pay him back at 6%. And it was a good lesson. I've never financed too many cars after that. Turned out to be a good old bike, though, and I'd ride it over to Basalt in the afternoon about 3 o'clock and weld until midnight, and then get home sometime 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and be up going to school next morning until noon. And this went on for a while, and got a chance to take a trip back to Chicago with a friend of mine on the train and visit, get away from it all for a bit. And the draft board found out about it, and when I got back, why, they had presented me with a draft notice to join the military. It wasn't long after that I was on a train heading for New Jersey, Atlantic City, New Jersey. They'd converted all those luxury hotels into military quarters and induction ceremony places for basic training stuff. And for classification, they had to figure out what everybody's going to be doing. And they initially put me in Army Signal Corps. And they're going to train me to be a linesman, to put up telephone lines and carry a rifle on my back and shoot the enemy and all that stuff. And I kept telling them I wanted to be a pilot. And I didn't know why, but I thought it'd be a lot better duty than doing that Army drudge work. And I caught them at a real good time because they needed pilots real bad. They were getting ready to do that Normandy invasion over there, and they needed to haul helicopters, not helicopters, but gliders across the bay and drop troops out of airplanes and stuff. And I hadn't even finished high school at the time, but I took the aptitude test and passed it. And then I had to go for a board and discuss my sexuality, that I like girls and stuff, and it was a normal thing, and I wasn't queer, and that I could probably become a pilot without embarrassing anybody. And they finally conceded that I probably could do as good a job as anybody, so I got sent down to primary training at Orange Field, South Carolina. A guy named Claude Harvey was my instructor. Hell of a nice guy. And after 8 hours of flying the Stearman duel with him, why, he turned me loose one day, and I took it off and flew around the pattern and come back in and landed and didn't kill myself. And from there, it was dual time and solo time. Probably got 36 hours, 40 hours in the Stearman. Anyhow, After Orangeburg, we went to Shaw Field at Georgia, and went through basic training in the BT-13. And we ended up doing night flying and doing night cross countries. And it's very interesting to be alone in a dumb little BT-13 up there at night, going cross country, and all of a sudden you look out and there's the ocean. You've just about overrun your checkpoint to turn around and get to the next checkpoint. But once you see that black out there and you know there's no city there, you better turn around. Anyhow, we turned around and got back to Shaw Field okay. And we'd end up sitting there in 4 quadrants circling around until it was our time to let down and land. And past all that, ran that Burma Trail with all the other guys out there, getting physically strong. Really, I was a very, very healthy, strong farm boy to start with. And in fact, on that train from California to that New Jersey, I could pretty near whip every guy on there individually. And so I got picked up with that nickname Rocky. And it kind of stuck with me for years and years. It didn't bother me too much. It couldn't remember Roger, well, I always can remember Rocky. And I think it was in Orange, in primary, that I was flying this open cockpit airplane, and at night I'd get to coughing. I had the real irritated throat and stuff, and I'd get to cough and get woke up, and the guy in the next bunk to me there was sitting there smoking a cigarette, and so I tried one. And needless to say, it passed me out like I'd been hit on the head with a hammer, and I went to sleep, slept good. So yeah, I'd get to coughing at night, I'd bum a cigarette off this guy. It wasn't long before I started smoking. And it was one of the dumbest things I could have ever done. Finished the basic training and got sent up to Seymour, Indiana, Freeman Field, to advanced flying, twin engine. And went through, this is in 43, into February 6th of 44 is when I finally graduated. Anyhow, I finally ended up at home in Sonoma on a little leave, and August of 44, and proposed to my girlfriend that I've been writing back and forth to all the time. In fact, I've been writing to a couple of them, but she was the one that I'd answer my letters. And invited her to come back to Seymour, Indiana and live. And she insisted that we have to get married first. So we got married. Got married on a Sunday. Got married by the same Seventh-day Baptist pastor that had baptized me when I was about 16 years old or so, Brother Easterly. And after the ceremony in the mission in Sonoma, which was a Catholic mission, that last one going north that they had built back in the days that they was building those missions, the Catholics found out about it and got so upset that they stopped all that hanky-panky going on as Protestants getting married in their missions. Anyhow, we got on a train that night down at Crockett, and it was a day coach, a bunch of people on it, and drove all the way to Indianapolis, however fast the train went. And needless to say, it was a very compassionate trip. We stayed in Indianapolis for a day or so. My car was down in Seymour, Indiana, and I think we caught a bus down there. But That's probably where our oldest daughter was conceived. We didn't know what it was doing, but it worked out. She turned out better than she's supposed to. We stayed there and instructed in Seymour for a while, and I got a chance to legally take my wife for a ride in that HE-10 one time, and put her over in the cockpit co-pilot seat and flew around a little bit in that HE-10 and landed her. And she probably wasn't too thrilled about it, but she did it. She had a little aversion of flying at that time, but I think she's gotten over it. But it wasn't long after that we got orders to, about Christmas time of 44, got orders down to Warrensburg, Missouri, to Salinas Air Force Base there, troop carrier training base. And she and I got in Pontiac with what we owned and drove down there. We managed to slide into somebody on a snowy street down there and mess up the front end of Pontiac a little bit. But we got to Warrensburg and found a rental bedroom in a home, and started training in that C-47, which included towing gliders at night, 200 foot around the terrain, and also snatching a glider off the ground with a big old pulley in the back of the airplane that would let out cable until they both got flying. Then we'd winch them on in to a decent length and tow them away. And I got to fly in the glider back there, being towed by an airplane one time, which was kind of an interesting experience. Fortunately, that ground around there is all pretty flat, and it was interesting, but a little bit out of line of what you normally figure you're going to be doing flying. But in the midst of the C-47 training, I ended up coming down with double earaches, just serious earaches, and got grounded, and wasn't able to graduate with that class. And I recovered, and they were bringing in the C-46, brand new twin-engine airplane, much bigger, stronger, and healthier. So I ended up getting washed back to the C-46, which probably, career-wise, was a good move. Went through that training and was crewed up with a captain named Kelly. They call him Stims Kelly, a hell of a nice young older fellow. And was set to go on a brand new airplane out in the Pacific, because they had finished that Normandy invasion and had won the war in Europe, but still needed to do things over in the Pacific. So as a crew, we went out to California, Salinas, to stage to get ready to go overseas. We were going to pick up an airplane and fly it over. And the time we were supposed to go from Warrensburg, California, why Connie's sister come in from East Coast. She'd been visiting her her husband back there. We had a daughter on the 5th of May, 1945, and this here is probably about August, close to October of 45. We're got these two babies and two women and myself in this little Pontiac convertible with a little shelf behind the main seats and rumble seat back there, opened up and filled up to the sky with stuff, and a bunch of old worn out World War II tires that were really bad. But we took off and headed west. Time we got to California, we'd gone through 13 different tires. They just wouldn't hold up and last. And the car was overloaded. And we went up through Denver and up through the mountains at night because we had to get there. And next morning, we're rolling down some drier pavement and had another tire go bad. And I'm jacking the thing up and I'm back there taking the wheel off. And my wife is sitting there with her foot on the brake, holding the thing and steady because the rear wheel's off the ground and it isn't going to hold anything because that's the emergency brakes are on it. And she gets consumed with talking to her sister and lets it off and it rolls off the jack. I have to start all over again. Fortunately, I didn't get hurt, but the potential was there. But we finally made it. And fortunately, those recapped tires we were buying didn't cost a whole lot, but they just wouldn't go anyplace. They just wouldn't last. They'd get out there rolling a while, they'd blow out. We got out to Sonoma, and she stayed with my folks. My wife did, with our new baby. And I went on down to Salinas and was processing to go overseas. And finally, she came down on a bus, and I think I sold the Pontiac down in Salinas. Wish I'd kept it. Hell of a nice little car. We visited down there, and all of a sudden they dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan and Hiroshima and Nagasaki and wiped them out and finished the war. And so all of that program was dropped, and the crews were broken up, and anybody had retainability was kept in the service and sent somewhere else. And my lot was to get sent to China. So we were stuck on another train going to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware with all these, I should say gentlemen, but they were a wild bunch. We got to Dover and got on a C-54 and flew over to the Azores and gassed up and went on into India. I got to go to the Taj Mahal while we were there and go swim in the Indian Ocean. Then we got swept out to sea. Didn't know how to swim with a dam, but kept my toes in the sand and dug it back to the beach. But learned about that undertow business real big there. But the Taj Mahal visit was very memorable. I think I even got pictures of it somewhere. Don't know where they're at. But we ended up flying up over the hump into Kunming, one of the primary cities out there in western China, and sit there for several days while they arranged transport into Shanghai. Naturally, we raced around and looked at the country over, and I'm sitting on the back end of this flatbed 6x6 with another 6x6 with a bunch of guys on it, and we're driving around the country there, and all of a sudden, the 6x6 I'm on is stopping, and the other guy isn't stopping quick enough, and I jerked my feet up just in time to keep from getting them both cut off. He hit us, smashed into us big time. And I decided at that point I deserved whatever hazard pay I was getting paid. We got the next flight into Hankow, and all they had there for accommodations was cots in an old hangar. And so we sacked out on those. In the middle of the night, rats will run around on our daggum cots, and I'd swish them off and knock them off. I don't know what they were looking for, but they were irritating us. But we didn't stay there too long. They finally got a flight into Shanghai and got stationed there. And set up. I was flying the C-46 then. Anyhow, I'm going to stop for now and carry on my China experience later.
You were still by yourself, right? You was living with your parents?
She had stayed with my parents for the time I was over in China, and she basically wasn't a real happy camper. She had wanted her own home. She and my sister fussed at each other considerably. Just natural, I guess. But at the point, I was in the realm of making something like $300 and some a month as a second lieutenant, and that didn't go very far even then. But I was over there in 45, the latter part of 45, and stayed there until 47. And we ended up flying all over China, out of Shanghai for a while, and then the whole outfit transferred up to Peiping. And I spent the better part of about 7-8 months up in Peiping, and then got out of the service over there because everybody's going out and going home and not finding any jobs or anything. I got a flying job with the Central Air Transport Corporation, flying C-46 for them. And so I went and took some leave I had coming, about 2 months, and went down to Shanghai and signed up with the company. Took one flight with them and had a check pilot with me, and I was declared a captain. I was going to be a captain. Anyhow, first flight out, I ended up with a Chinese co-pilot, couldn't speak a bit of English, and fortunately, we did things with hand signals and stuff. Got by, but most of the flights I had, I couldn't communicate with my daggum crew members. But there's stories I could tell you about flying for this airline in China and flying in China. I would run a whole roll of that stuff, really. But I stayed there until 47, Christmas Eve of 46. They lost 3 company airplanes trying to buck into real low visibility. Oh, both. Yeah, it'd be both. And a lot of times we'd be flying communists. But Christmas Eve of 46, they lost 3 airplanes trying to get into Shanghai for Christmas Eve. And they bucked bad weather in there. That ground control radar had just come out, GCA they called it. But the crews aren't real acquainted with flying it, and the people on the ground weren't totally acquainted with operating it. So they killed a lot of folks, crashed 3 airplanes. Well, when that news hit the States, why, your grandma and my mother both started sending me wires to come home, all is forgiven. I'd made $1,500 just flying in December of 46. We got paid at a rate of 146 miles an hour, air miles. And we actually went faster than that. I actually didn't put that many hours in, but I got paid for it. 1 month, a few months before that, I'd lost $325 because I got paid in Chinese CNC, and I didn't get in until 3 days late to get it converted. You know, I lost $325. So we raised a stink, and they started paying us in U.S. money. But I came home with about $8,000 saved up. In early 47, I caught a company plane from Shanghai down to Philippines for free, and gives Pan American Airlines $1,600 and some odd bucks to run into San Francisco. And I had that 45 that I still have hitting here on my chest. And I had my carbine with me, and I had a few other personal things. Unfortunately, the damn customs, when they got to Hawaii, took that carbine and kept it. I wouldn't give it back, but they didn't know I had the 45, so I still got it. Anyhow, got in San Francisco, and damn, I don't know how I got to Sonoma, but I got a bus or something and got up there. And I was going to take your grandma and your aunt back over there, because I had a home over there, I had a houseboy over there, I had a Jeep over there, I had a motorcycle over there, and I was all set to go over there and, you know, make some good money for a while. But since we had the only grandchild that Thibeau family had, they decided that they don't want me to go over there. So I stayed home and went back to Detroit and bought that 47 Plymouth convertible. They wanted $500 more than that damn thing was worth just because they could get it. They were real short of supply, and I needed the car real bad, so I went ahead and paid them. But I told the guy, this is the last damn new car I'll ever buy from you Detroit people. It has been. Anyhow, I was so ticked with that car. By the time I got to California, I went ahead and sold the damn thing, got my money back. But on the way to Indianapolis, I went back to Pontiac dealer there. I forget what the hell. I think I saw an ad, and I bought a 42 model Pontiac Chieftain, a 4-door sedan, kind of a streamlined old buggy, had a swooping back end anyhow, for my folks, because they hadn't had a new car in years. And we got a tow bar thing, which I still have, a little clampy thing, and hooked them together and drug that Plymouth all the way to California. And got out there, and Dad, being a very conservative fellow, decided he didn't want that straight 8-cylinder gas-eating hog that I bought for him. So I kept it and sold the Plymouth. Plymouth is a nice little car, but it irritated me. They haven't screwed me over that bad. At $1,400, I would have loved the hell out of it. But at $2,100 or something like that, I didn't like it with a damn. Yeah, and you know, you watch these car ads now, and these damn crooked folks, they can come on with all this BS, and still the price hasn't moved that much, you know. 1947, we just come back from Detroit, towing 2 cars, and basically we went and bought us a house, $8,500 on Brown Street, 2019 Brown Street. Got the loan from Bank of America, and I think it ran out at about 6%, something like that, 5%. Anyway, I think I have a payment of $65 a month, and we eventually paid it off. Sold it in about, let's see, 3 for $15,000. Thought we'd cut a fat hog in the butt. But right now, it'd take about $350,000 to buy the damn thing back. Anyhow, the Pontiac that we brought back and kept wouldn't fit into the garage because it was built for an old 1920s or 30s model car and very short, so we had to extend it, build the garage over, and that lasted until we got the Cadillac in Florida after it had been recalled, and so we had to redesign it again and put the doors on a different swing from the outside. Anyhow, from 47, after I got the house, I went to Santa Rosa and went to instructor school for civilian pilot training instructor's license, and acquired that and went to work for Bridgeford Flying Service, teaching GIs how to fly, and also some female pilots. And also one old codger that was a veteran, probably in the Civil War. I don't know, he was pretty old. He finally crashed on me one day after I finally let him solo after 30-some hours, and finished his aviation career and messed up an airplane. And there was a little bad judgment on my part to ever let him solo, but seemed like he could handle it, and I did, and he didn't. His name was Don Gosney. He had bought a nice Jardur chronograph to celebrate his flying, and came in the store where the wife was working one time and sold it to me for $50, which I still have it somewhere. The GI flying lasted for about 2 years, 2.5 years, and tapered off to the point where they didn't need me anymore. And so I had acquired 2 airplanes and was fooling around with them for a while, kind of unemployed, and ended up going to work for Jack Nance, peddling cigarettes, all over the counties, which was semi-interesting. I quit smoking for a year while I was doing it. Felt pretty good. And all the time I was in and out of bars and could get cigarettes for free, but it just felt much better when I wasn't smoking. Anyhow, in 51 come along, and that Korean War was blooming out, and they recalled my reserve outfit from Hamilton to active duty, and so I was sent over to Travis to fly aerovac on C-47s up and down the coast, from Korean injured coming back from the war and getting dispersed to hospitals close to their home. And we'd go as far as Phoenix and Tucson with that C-47. Usually just overnight trips. And the thing was getting prolonged, and they were having to fly wounded people all the way back to the East Coast to Washington, D.C. at Andrews, and so they sent some of us down to West Palm Beach to go through the C-54 ground training and flying training to get qualified in that aircraft. And I flew in on a commercial and ended up buying this 50 model Cadillac convertible after I was there a while, and finished up the training and caught a big old sailfish out there on the ocean and had it smoked and canned. And when I finished the training, I put all that stuff in the Cadillac with the top down and headed back to California nonstop. I'd borrowed $500 from a friend of mine down there, and called the bank and got a loan for the car, and Connie went down and signed off on it. I think we gave something like $2,300 for it. Beautiful little car, V8. Finally got it to where it do 19 miles a gallon, which is good for a car that size. We got back to California and started flying aerovac out of Travis all the way to Scott Air Force Base, and then on into Andrews, and then dropping the plane to let somebody else take it back to California, and we'd sit there for 2 or 3 days waiting for the next airplane. And that's where I started playing golf on the base there. It was pretty sorry. Never played it before, but got me started playing it. We flew those aerovac missions until they started getting the Convair twin-engine pressurized airplanes in service, and they didn't want to downgrade us 4-engine aircraft commanders to that twin-engine aircraft again, so we got shipped over to Pacific Division to fly the C-124s out of Travis to across the ocean and back, which meant in 1954 about why we had another daughter, and she was very young, and we got sent back down to Palm Beach to fly the C-124s training. And so we put the 2 daughters in the back seat and drove down there with the Longs, who were driving a 1954 Ranchero Ford 6-cylinder with a overdrive, and damn if we didn't beat him on gas mileage going down there and gas mileage coming back. And he ended up getting his new Ford tuned up down there in Palm Beach. Got back from the the C-124 training, and had pretty well close to top of the class in the academic part of it, and started checking out in it, going across the Pacific and back, and did that until about 1959. I got sent over to Johnson Island to be in operations personnel for Mac aircraft going in and out to support the newsreel event where they sent a nuclear device into the ionosphere and exploded it and made a big hole in the ionosphere to see what type of effect it would have on radio communications around the world. That lasted about 90 days. I was able to fly the family over to Hawaii and get a place for them, and they sat over there and vacation while I was down in Johnson Island. I'd fly in every other weekend or so and visit. Anyhow, after that, I was pretty close to overseas assignment and ended up getting sent to Kadena and MAC command post duty, and was able to fly over and arrange to get a house and bring the family over all at the same time. And we went over and spent 4 years over there from 59 to 63, working 12 hours on and 12 off as MEC in the MEC command post. Yeah, in operations field, clearing the aircraft in, getting them loaded, getting them fixed, whatever it took. I had to fly a certain amount just to keep my proficiency. I'd go on little trips, and they had a base flight C-47 there that I checked out in right away because I was quite proficient in it. And after I checked out in it, the air freight officer was a qualified flight instructor in the T-33 jet, and so I didn't have any jet time, and they were recommending I get some, so I started flying in flew about 350 hours while I was over there for 4 years. It was a sweetheart little thing. It was like getting in a race car. You'd come over the high station at 20,000 feet and drop the dive brakes and come zooming down in one big old pattern. And the next thing you're on final with the gear down, and flaps down, and you sit down. If you were low on fuel, but had enough, well, you could pull that stuff up, hit the throttle again, take off, and we'll zooming up in the sky. It really performed when it got that light. You'd love it. After some dual instruction in it, I took it solo from Kadena on up to Korea, capital of Korea, and landed and picked up some fuel and filed a clearance and flew back down to Kadena. And at 30,000 feet in that thing, you can see forever. It's weird sitting up there. It's so daggum spacious and lonely, you know. You just hope the thing keeps running good. In 63, though, we had to come home, and I'd gotten assigned to Andrews Air Force Base, and I got my little Jaguar Mark 7 drowned it out in the flood over there, so I managed to trade it off and get a little 3.4 liter 59 model Jaguar sedan, and it had some problems. Couldn't get parts for it, fix the brakes, so I had to drive it down to Naha to get it on the boat with just the emergency brake and the automatic transmission. I got it slowed down enough I'd stick it in reverse and it'd stop. But got it down there and got it shipped to Oakland, and time we got word that it arrived at Oakland, when I had gotten the parts to fix the brakes, and took my oldest daughter, and we went down and fixed the brakes and drove it home, and loaded our little trailer up, and put it behind the little Jaguar. And when the time came, when I headed for Washington, D.C., clean across country, with these 3 girls in the back seat and Grandma and myself up front. It was a hell of a trip. But we finally made it, and meantime, I'd had a boat built up in Japan when I was flying back and forth over there, and it got finished, and had a friend pick it up out Tachikawa. They trucked it out there on a little Chidoshi 3-wheel truck pickup sort of thing, and he threw it on an empty airplane and flew it down to Kadena for me. It was a real pretty little lap-strake wooden boat. I think I only paid about $350 for it. It came in when I was on duty. I had to get somebody to cover for me and get the damn thing off the ramp real quick, take it out the house. And when it come home, I had built a trailer for it at the hobby shop, which I still have. And took the axle and wheels off the trailer and the front tongue, and condensed everything inside the boat, and had a cover built for it and shipped home to Baltimore as deck cargo. Took quite a while to get there, but it only cost $165 to get it all the way from Kadena to the East Coast. And I had an extra bunch of stuff of everything in it, which some of it I still have. Anyhow, we got word that it was at Baltimore, why we were already there at Andrews, and had rented a house. So we took the Jaguar and run up there, and got a forklift to whoop it up in the air, and got the axle under it, and put the tongue on it, and drug it home. And we finally got to use it a little bit in the Potomac River there, but it was so dried out that it had to have water sitting in it for about 3 days before it would swell up enough to keep from leaking. So we spent 4 years there at Andrews moved on base after about the first year. So I was on base there for about 3 years, and our oldest daughter, Connie, ended up going to college there. And finally we got assigned down here to San Antonio, and had to go off and leave her to finish up her college. And we had traded the Jaguar off for a little Carmen Ghia, and drove it down here. One of the first cars I drove down here to get down here, and made it on about $22 worth of gas, which is a real slick little machine. I had acquired a Studebaker station wagon, and later went back and picked it up with a trailer behind it. Yeah, no, I picked the boat up behind it. I had the boat behind it, brought the boat back down. And then another trip, I went back and picked up my XK120 Jaguar coupe that I'd acquired also. And I had the trailer behind it. And drug it all the way down here. And I was down here about 4 or 5 months by myself, looking at property, and till the kids could get out of school and stuff. And then I went back up Christmas time of 1968 and picked up the Mark 10 and the family and drove down through New Orleans and into San Antonio and showed them the houses I'd been looking at, and we finally settled on this house here. Oh, I was assigned to the 19th Military Airlift Squadron, and I was an assistant operations guy that did all the scheduling and also flying. I rechecked out in the C-124, had to run up to Oklahoma City and go through their simulator and some of their training up there, and take a check ride or two, and then I was a captain again. Well, I was a flight examiner in the thing later on. I had been a flight examiner in it when I was out at Travis. And that's the guy that goes along and checks pilots out, see if they're doing everything right, following the rules and regulations, safety procedures. In 1969, why the C-124 was phased out of the active duty commission and sent off to the boneyards at Tucson. I flew a couple of them out there and dropped them off and flew back commercial. C-141 was coming on line, and it moved so much faster. It was doing the mission of flying helicopters over to Vietnam and all sorts of things back so much quicker than we could, that we lost our mission. And that squadron was set up to fly nuclear warheads all over the damn world and position them and fly them into Texas here to get revamped, up to date, modified. And so we got to fly all over the world pretty much. We didn't go into Russia or any place like that, but got to fly over to England and back, and over Germany and back, and stop out the Azores and buy Royal Crown out there real cheap. It was an interesting mission. The last year, the squadron was cut down to a little detachment, and Colonel Zweig and myself were one of the few officers left there, and I was the chief of maintenance, and he was the commander yet. And we took care of the Mac aircraft that come in here and left. Do their mission, dropping off stuff, picking up stuff. And then on August 6, 1970, he and I got replaced by some other officers, and we stood up in the same ceremony and got retired. We ended up becoming good friends after we got retired. Now the damn Air Force business, and played a lot of golf together. I taught him how to weld, and he ended up welding up himself a little golf cart to put his golf trailer to put his golf cart on. Anyhow, poor old guy got prostate cancer, and it finally got him, and he died.
Did you have a concrete truck company?
Yeah, I got out of the service about a year earlier than I could have to get 30 in, to take a chief pilot job with this guy. Is supposed to get some money to buy a couple Gulfstream 2s, and we messed around with each other a bit, but he never got his money. I never got my $40,000 a year job he had promised me, and so I ended up picking up a used concrete ready-mix truck that hauled 7 yards of concrete as a white, with a big old gas engine in it that got about 3.5 miles a gallon. And I give $1,000 for it. It had 7 yards of hard concrete in it because the drum had quit turning on them, and they couldn't get it out fast enough, and it got hard on them. And drove it back from Houston. Hired one of my GIs that had worked for me out there and chief of maintenance, and took us 30 days. We got in there and chiseled that concrete out with a jackhammer. Dug a hole right straight down and started breaking out bigger chunks. But took us 30 days. We had a Rex Air vacuum cleaner that would filter the air and blow it into a mask, an oxygen mask, and keep our lungs free of that dust. But we'd go in there for an hour at a time, and then let the other guy go in for an hour. It's either an hour or 2 hours, something like that. But we finally got it all cleaned up, got it working, and run the thing for a year. Made about $12,000 with it the first year, which wasn't bad, but it was tough work. You end up doing a lot of work on the truck, and then hauling concrete, and then spending the rest of the day doing work on the truck and stuff. In the meantime, got a chance to buy another one, and it didn't have any concrete in it, but didn't have any mufflers on it either, so I put these here ear muffs on my head to drive it back from Houston, and about halfway, I couldn't hear it, but it started knocking, and it blew a connecting rod out on the road, and so it sat there for a bit, and I had to hitchhike on in, and I hitchhiked back to Houston and picked up my car that I'd left there and drove back here, and then I got this my commander to drive out of here about 7 o'clock in the morning in that old Toyota station wagon, which I still have. And I took off at 3 o'clock in the morning in the other concrete truck. And we went down and put a tow bar on this thing, and hooked it up to the front tow truck to something there that was just into a sheet of metal. And unfortunately, about halfway from where it was to here, it broke loose and went traveling out through a field on us, through a fence, and went out there and hooked onto it with a chain, drug it back out, and hooked the daggum thing up to the bumper again with the chain and drug it on in. But it was a exciting damn trip. Got the crankshaft all fixed up and chrome plated, and cost me about $300 and some bucks, and got the engine all together and got it running, and sold two of them for $10,000, which wasn't bad. Unfortunately, the guys only paid me about half of it, and they went kaput. And I just forgot them. They weren't worth going after. They went down to Live Oak County, way down there, country, and
Is that your last job?
Oh, I had the one truck left, and I did some contract work. I put several little driveway extensions and sidewalks in for people and stuff, and made pretty good money at it. But I just didn't have any good help, and I was overworking myself, so I got a chance to sell a concrete truck. I quit that too. But I ended up working on cars and trying to refurb some of them and sell them. I had picked up that 70 model XKE coupe or convertible, and when I sold it, I sold it for about $15,500, and I'd only give $2,300 for the damn thing, so I figured I could do that with a lot of them. Unfortunately, it was a rare case. I just didn't have made that kind of money on any more of them I've worked on. But I had picked up a Pontiac GTO and made out pretty good selling it. The Jaguar got refurbed up in Dallas and sent back over to England, and guy sold it for $35,000 over there. Found out later. It's a case that didn't have any rust in it, but it was an interesting case. I got it so cheap because a colored gentleman had stole it in Houston and headed for Corpus Christi, and they were doing the back roads, and they come up on a 90-degree bend with a bayou of water sitting out there in front of them, and splashed out into it because they couldn't get the car stopped quick enough. And it actually cut some of the rubber off the tire, flattened the deck and tire off because they locked up a wheel. So I think it'd sit in salt water for a little bit. So I had a lot of cleaning up to do, but I bought it so damn cheap that it was worth it to do it. And I took it out to California and back one time, and I'd go out there and get my trailer, visit my dad and stuff. It was a fun thing to drive. I'd left California with the top down, that trailer behind me, and a little sack in the trailer along with some other stuff I was bringing back. And I got up there at Kingman, Arizona, I think it was, and pulled in behind the service station, was sacked up in that trailer and sleeping up a storm. It started snowing on me. I had to get up and put the top up, cover the damn thing up, and got the hell out of there. But got down out of that high country and warmed up and put the top back on, cruised all the way into home here.
What else happened there? Mid-70s?
Yeah, that was
70s.
That was about 75, 74, 76.
When did you go shoot that elk?
Ah, the elk. Oh, I had been out in California, and I had this van, and I stopped and saw my kids in Farmington, John and Connie, and they had picked up a license for me to hunt up there in Colorado. I think it cost $100. And I went on out to California, and I was helping Dad paint the trim around the windows on the old ranch house there. And I stepped out on this daggum concrete ledge that he had there, and the concrete gave away, and I went tumbling down about from that top of that ledge there to the wall and to the bottom of the basement concrete floor there. And man, I was in shock. I couldn't even get up for a while. But I finally went over to Travis, and they checked me over, and nothing was broken, and they gave me some crutches, which I still have. They're out there in that blue car. Anyhow, I was gimpy. I could walk, but I was gimpy, and I had this appointment to go hunting up in Colorado with a couple of guys from Houston that were John's friends. One of them had his son with him, and another guy, and John and myself, and up there in Klein's Corner, they call it. Anyhow, I left California with Earl Jr.'s 2 daughters and dropped them off in Utah, and got on down there in time to meet the guys, and went on up in the mountains there early. There were just a couple of us at first, and then the rest of them came on up. And I didn't have an elk license, but one of the guys did. And after we'd hunted there for several days and didn't shoot anything, well, we decided anybody see anything that was legal to shoot, let's shoot it. And I had been hunting with my 30-06, and I shot it some the day before, and it wasn't near as accurate as my 300 Savage was. I was hitting a daggum Coleman can at 200 yards with that 300 Savage just every time. And so we were on our last day's hunt, and we get up there, and we're walking along the side of this mountain looking for something to eat. And I was out in front of these guys quite a ways, but I was walking real slow and easy. And I come to this opening there to my left, where it kind of looked like they would cut out trees to put a power line up through it, but never did. And I heard this commotion of animals coming up through the trees there, and so I started scoping them. And there were several females come through, and I let them go, and finally this guy with the horns on him showed up, and I already had the bead on his shoulder, and I just squeezed the trigger off, and they all took off in a big rush going up the hill, and it was mostly shale, and it was tough going, and the old bull followed them, but when he got that shale, he couldn't make it, and I reloaded the gun and picked up my brass and put it in my pocket and sit there and watched him. And I was ready to shoot him again if I had to. And fortunately, he sit there and succumbed. And I was able to go up and just turn him around a little bit and slit him open and take the innards out. And they took pictures of him. In fact, you might want one of those pictures for your going. We got some more back there in that camp. But I didn't tell the guys that I'd shot anything until later in the morning, when after we'd had breakfast and stuff. We went and backtracked and caught all those tracks and came up on him there. They told him I'd shot a rabbit. But we got the Jeep, or the Bronco, and went up there and drug his big butt down the mountain and put the rope up through the Bronco and lifted and shoved and pulled and got him up inside the Bronco. And then there was 4 of us on the Bronco, and it was sitting on its axles, and got it down there to camp. And we pulled him up in the tree as high as we could get him, and held his shoulders and head and neck were still laying on the ground. He was a big old animal, but his horns weren't all that big. But we cleaned him out and brought him home, split him up, and I give the guy that had the license half the meat, and I kept the hide and the head and the other half. And left the head up there and got it mounted. Finally went back and picked it up. We went into town, and I bought a belt buckle. It said Colorado Rocky Mountain High. And wore it a little bit, but I found out it was just plated lead or something. It wasn't a brass buckle, and I'd paid for a brass buckle. So the next trip I went through there, I took the damn thing back and ready to hell with them. They gave me a brass buckle, which I still have. Anyhow, the next day we let's see, was it that afternoon? John ended up shooting a little buck, and it went over the side of a mountain, and we had to pull it back up the top of the mountain and drag it on down the hill to the camp. But he and I were the only ones that hit anything there, shot anything.
What do you remember about the 80s?
Mm.
You had a grandson.
Isn't that fantastic? Wow. Well, we had this 70 model LTD wagon or car, and you ended up being born up there in Ogden area, Utah, and we had Alex with us, and we're driving through the snow up there on 80 going west to get there before your arrival, and we made it. But from what I can gather, your mother was in fantastic good shape for giving birth, and well, you arrived like that. You just come in a big hurry. You're at the air base. What the hell are you? Hill Air Force Base. Yeah, your dad and I both played a little golf there. We ended up doing an awful lot of running around. That old Ford did good to us, and I still got it too. The rats are eating it up there. The kids have broken the windows up. It was sad. It had 351 Cleveland engine in it, and hell, we could turn 20 miles a gallon with that all the time. Just leave the air conditioning cycle on and off and keep it down below 70. Good old car. Retirement? What's retirement? Well, I've collected a lot of golf clubs. Can't hit them all worth a damn, but I've collected them. But the best that I've got now is this here Cobras, and I get to play twice a week maybe. Normally I'd be playing Saturday mornings about 6:30, 6:50, 6:40. We tee off in the dark and see if we can find our balls. This group I play with on Saturdays are a bunch of nice Democrat fellows, and they play for $1 a hole. If they win anything, they don't get it. If they lose, I get it, put an envelope. And we end up having a big old dinner around the end of the year with all the money. We had $443.50 this last dinner, and time they got done fooling around, drinking and eating, why they'd gone through $1,000 and something up Plaza Club.
This year?
This year, yeah. Well, it was last year. This year is first of 2005, but it was 14th of December last year, and they ended up going around collecting $40 from each couple to get out of there, and then we were still $262 short. So Johnny put it on his tab, and now when we play, why Johnny has to get another $200 back out of the envelope. It was totally overly extravagant. They playing with $70 bottle of wine and stuff like that. It's kind of silly, but when you go play golf with people like that, you get stuck with that sort of thing. The week group I play with are a couple of retired militaries, and one has a nightclub business, quite well off. Anyhow, we end up having nice games together, usually on Tuesday. And since I have a card for the city, can get tea times over the phone on Thursday, and for weekends or any time during the week, why they always let me set up the damn things. just being nice to me,
Any other stories?
Well, it turned out a little tragedy in '86. My kid brother, who was 50, had this welding job that at the shipyard where I used to work when I was going to high school. And he had been over there welding on pipes and stuff for 20 years. And he was a very, very methodical, technical, good working guy. And he could do anything. But he lost that job to the Japanese shipping pipe over here cheaper than we could make it. And got depressed over it and didn't get the proper medication and ended up committing suicide. And he had lived in town there where my dad lived all his life and had kids and had a home paid for, had his kids pretty well raised, and it was just a big tragedy. And I flew out the next day and into San Francisco and sit at a restaurant up in Petaluma that night, got a bus up that far, and then the next morning I got a bus over to Sonoma and walked out to the ranch, and my dad was sitting there totally dejected and upset and sad. Anyhow, I spent a week there with him, and we finally convinced him to come down to Texas here and visit and get away from there for a while. And we started out, we got the old Chrysler that's sitting in the alley out here, rigged out with a bed and back so that we could both go back there and lay down, take a little rest anytime we wanted to. And we drove from Sonoma up to Chico, where my sister lived, and spent about 3 days. Well, the drive up there warmed up the transmission enough where the oil and varnish in that daggum transmission glued the gears together, and when we got ready to leave, we couldn't do anything but back up. We couldn't get it to go forward. Couldn't get it in forward gear. So I backed it around into the shop behind the house and pulled the plate off and looked in there and see if I could do anything to fix it. And it didn't look like it was going to be easy. So we borrowed the sister's Cadillac and threw everything in it and left that day anyhow. And we took a week to drive from Chico to Texas and stopped in motels and spent the night and stopped and saw everything we could see along the road. And Dad would just go to sleep over there, and I'd be driving across the desert, and finally woke up, and he was feeling pretty good. We got here and spent 3 days, and saw the air show that the Thunderbird put on out at Kelly, and went to the breweries and saw their displays and stuff, and was set to do something on that next morning. And finally, around 8 o'clock, I went in there, and he was gone. He'd died or sometime around midnight. We'd set up the night before and watched the news and had a little ice cream together, and he went in and passed away just no time at all. And we got him all fixed up in a coffin and got the permits and stuff and put him in that blue van, and your mother and sister, you all three, we all went to California in it. And had this funeral out there. That was it. Hey.
Okay. How you doing?
We just buried Grandpa in Sonoma.
Moving about long,
Just trying to think of stories now, kind of done all the timeline stuff.
Anyhow, prostate cancer? You want to hear about my prostate cancer? Or you don't want to hear about my prostate cancer? Anyhow.
You want to say to your great-great-grandchildren, to watch this 50 years from now?
Oh.
Never have known you, so they would take it.
I think I'll miss it. So I might still be around here. You can never tell.
Yeah, you never know.
No, I won't last forever. I could tell you about my little melanoma on my neck here that was sitting there, and I went to California, and in the process of shaving out there, I irritated it. And Dad, being a nurse, he said, "You better get that looked at when you get back." And I'd had it for some time. I don't know why in the hell I hadn't done something about it before, but it just didn't bother me. And I got back from that trip. Why, it had festered up a fair amount, and so I took it out to Lackland Dermatology, and they took one look at it and said, "We're going to take that off." And they did, and sewed up the skin there. And next day I'm out there playing golf with my friends, and Connie comes out and tells me, "You got to go to the hospital. You got cancer." Anyhow, it was cancerous, and so they eventually did a 7.5-hour surgery and took out 13 lymph nodes out of my chest and neck here, and a scar up across the back of my ear here out to my shoulder, and one down in my neck here, and rearranged a muscle or two, and apparently got everything. None of the lymph nodes were positive. And wasn't long after that, I had this little pimple on my nose. It just wouldn't heal up. You know, it was always just a little irritating turkey. And I'd gone and see dermatologists, and they'd take a little biopsy of the thing, of the skin is all. And finally, this dermatologist says, "That's a lot deeper than I can handle." And they sent me to the Mohs doctor, Dr. Hobbs over here. And I went in there in the morning at, I think it was 7 or 8, and didn't get out until noon. And 6 times on his table, cut out some, he'd go test it, and I'd go read a book, and he'd keep it, deaden it and stuff. It wasn't all that painful, but he finally dug down to the cartilage in the side of my nose here, in the middle of my nose, and my cheekbone. I could lay my whole finger in the thing. And then he sewed the skin up over it, and it more or less cured that, but it was real deep. It had gone all the way down the bone. And it wasn't long after that, I got another little melanoma on my cheek here from all those hours of flying and driving cars, the sun shining through that glass and magnifying it and heating it up. And they cut a strip of that out and tested it and didn't get it all, so I had to go back and they cut some more out. So my whole left side of my face has been defaced and lifted and unduly worked on. This is a good side.
You look at me, you should be okay.
Yeah, I know. No, it itches, and you know, this side of my nose is very flexible. This has got some cartilage in it and stuff, but this side collapses sometimes, and I have to pull it apart. It gets to itching and stuff, but it beats being dead. Did I tell you about the old Waco I took apart and brought home and put in my garage and left it sit there for years? Finally, I sold it for $800. Somebody built it up and fixed it up, and it's probably worth about $350,000 now. I wouldn't doubt it. The airplanes are very expensive. Gas, aviation fuel is up around $2.65 or something a gallon.
All right, gas miles are going to take.
Huh?
3 miles a gallon.
Oh, that old Jake on that thing was burning, I think, about 9 gallons an hour or something like that, cruising. It wasn't very fast. It was pretty slow. See, it was built in 35. And the little UPF-7 I had was built in 41. It had a Continental on it, 7 cylinders in a radial condition. And you had a crank that you'd crank up an energized thing and then pull a thing and it go, turn it over, start it up. Or you could hand prop it. You go up there and you swing down and get out of the way, and if it started up, well, you'd move farther out of the way. But we used to have to hand prop them sometime. In fact, we even got to the point where I was over there at Travis. When I first got recalled, I was assigned to ramp control, and that's the liaison between operations and what's going on out there on the ramp. And I've actually devised a rope on the tip of a propeller. We'd take and crank it through and prime it and put a rope on it, and then several guys get out there and one guy get there pulling it down, and it was on the tip so that it wouldn't slide down the pop. And you'd pull on it, pull the engine through, and get them started that way. It didn't happen but a couple of times, but otherwise you'd have to sometimes start up engines, maybe three, and if you had a starter out on that other one, you'd run it down the runway and get enough speed up to get it turn it over and fire it up, and then back off and take it back there and check it out and take off. But it's been a very interesting life, really. It was not always easy, but most lives aren't.